Hi, I'm Jesse, and today we're counting down 10 great audiobooks. I love audiobooks, and I used to listen to them even more back when I walked to work. Now I work from home. It's so convenient to listen to them, and some of them are just so beautifully acted that you get these wonderful stories told beautifully, in which the narrator is just as important as the author in telling the story. I won't talk too much about these. Hopefully, it'll let me put in some samples of the audio so you can see for yourself what they're like. But let's get into it. So, first, we have one of my favorite books of all time, The Sandman. This is an original graphic novel from like 1991 or something. This is just an excellent story. The audiobook is amazing in terms of having a full cast of well known actors who just do an incredible job. It's down closer to the bottom of the list because I do think it loses something without having the visuals. There are just so many cool visuals in the comic and now in the TV show. But the audiobook is incredible, an incredible way to experience the story.
I don't have any idea.
London, May, 1986. Rick Maddox's Study. Book-lined classic.
So, what is it? It smells quite disgusting.
Next is some nonfiction, The Power Broker. This audiobook is 60 hours long. So if you need something to do for a couple months or a year, this is great because this is one of the best books of all time. And it's a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. It tells the story of New York City, essentially, through the biography of one man who was both a great and terrible person. And it really peels away the layers of history and shows you a side of the world, the political side, that exists everywhere, but you're not always aware of it. How did this get made? Why did this happen? Why is this the way it is? We take for granted a lot of things, but they were all constructed for a reason by people that had debates and challenges and drama. And it's just so interesting to read about it. And it's a fabulous book, and the audiobook narrator is wonderful. And they have to be to last that long through the whole story, but it's worth it.
Men who saw in the bond between Robert Moses and Alfred Emanuel Smith a key to the shape in which the future of New York State and New York City unfolded, as well as to one of the great stories of American politics, never told in its full depth, the blood feud between Smith and Franklin D. Roosevelt, would wonder what had forged between the two men of independence and pride and ambition a tie so strong that, transcending independence and pride and ambition, it would be ended only by death.
Next is one similar to The Sandman. It's Lock and Key, another graphic novel, more recent, that is one of my favorites, is just excellent. And again, with a full cast, acting out the entire thing is just so enjoyable and robust and interesting to listen to. It's really, really cool. It's a great story about this haunted house with all these magical keys. And it's definitely a favorite.
Our story begins one summer vacation in Mendocino County, California, with guidance counselor Rendell Locke and his family. Wife, Nina, Tyler, a high school senior whose mind is more focused on girls than books, Kinsey, a freckly 15-year-old sporting blonde dreads and brow rings, and Bodie, a 6-year-old boy with skinned knees and an open mind.
Next is Tune In, which is part 1 of 3. The other 2 are being written. You can see why it takes a while to write them. About the history of the Beatles. So if you don't like the Beatles, this isn't for you, but if you do, or even if you're mildly interested in it, it's fascinating, and the narration is so beautiful. The narrator does all the voices of the different Beatles so well to such an extent that you can tell who's speaking without them having to say it. And that includes the supporting cast as well, Brian Epstein and George Martin and all these people. It just, these different distinct voices telling this compelling story, and it's really fascinating and such a deep dive into it that if you are a Beatles fan at all, it's the best book about them that I've encountered so far.
Paul said he already had a job playing in a group and they were beginning to go places, But Jim was so resolute that Paul went back to Renshaw Hall and did the jobless shuffle again. I went down to the Labour Exchange in me donkey jacket and jeans. The fellow sent me to an electrical engineers firm called Massey and Coggins. I told the boss I wanted a job. I wasn't particular. I said I'd sweep the yard if he wanted.
This next one's a lot of fun, and the audiobook makes it even more fun. It's a comedy adventure story about a ordinary guy who discovers that the world is a computer simulation, and he discovers how to hack it and give himself magical powers, and goes back in time and pretends to be a wizard in the Middle Ages. Because, of course, that's what you would do once you had magical powers. But it's hilarious. It's really, really funny. And the narration makes it even more funny with the various different characters playing off each other and doing stupid things. And it's a series. The other books are great, too. And I highly recommend it.
Philip was still staring into the crystal ball, muttering things and sporadically typing on the Commodore 64's concealed keyboard when Martin entered an hour later. "My new staff is drawing. What next?" Philip didn't look up from the crystal ball. "Have a seat. We're ready for the good part. How's the temperature in here, Martin? Comfortable?" It's a little hot and stuffy, but not bad." "Where do you usually put the thermostat in your home?" "About 78 degrees.
Next, we have a classic, Anne of Green Gables, one of my favorite books. The audiobook is particularly good. It's done by Rachel McAdams, the actor, and you can really tell that she brings this rich acting experience to it. Does different voices for all the different characters, which is amazing. Like her Matthew Cuthbert is incredible. Just such a wonderful narrator and so well done. It makes the story so enjoyable.
Marilla came briskly forward as Matthew opened the door. But when her eyes fell of the odd little figure in the stiff, ugly dress, with the long braids of red hair and the eager, luminous eyes, she stopped short in amazement. "Matthew Cuthbert, who's that? Where is the boy?" "There wasn't any boy," said Matthew wretchedly. "There was only her."
The next one is a little bit of self-promotion, kind of self. It's my wife's book. It's called Hungry for Life. It's her memoir of anorexia. This is, it is self-promotion, but it's better than getting an ad in the middle of the video, right? At least it's related, because this is a really, really good audiobook. It's narrated by my wife, who has a background as an actor. And it's just this really in-depth story that shows you a side to anorexia, especially the recovery process that not a lot of stories focus on, and gets you into the mindset of this illness to really understand what can be a confusing and counterintuitive illness. And it's really well written. Highly recommended.
Rachel Eve Moses.
Applause! I walked up to the podium to receive my diploma, my chicken legs feeling cold and unstable. I tried to use my acting chops to fake sincerity as I hugged and shook hands with the faculty members. And then it was over. Another important life event that passed me by. Now it was time for me to shine, right? To go out there into the real world and pursue my acting career. Here I am, world. I'm 21 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and 69 pounds.
The next book is As You Wish, and if you thought, having to be a Beatles fan to like the Beatles book was obscure, for this one you have to be a fan of The Princess Bride. If you're not, then skip this part. But if you're a fan of The Princess Bride, which is a classic movie from 1980, whatever, this book is a story of the making of the movie, as written by Carrie Elways, who is the lead. And what's fascinating about the audiobook specifically is that he does all these different voices. He does impersonations of all the different actors and does a wonderful job. They're incredible. And the audiobook features snippets from all the other actors for real as well. Just Robin Wright and Billy Crystal and Wallace Shawn and all of these famous people from the movie. And it's just really fun, a really fun adventure and an interesting look into how movies are made. So that's a great one to listen to as well.
"So who's playing him?" I asked. "Oh man, we got the perfect guy," Rob said excitedly. "Remember the wrestler I told you about in Berlin? His name is Andre the Giant. His last name is really the Giant? You've never heard of him? Bill Goldman asked, cracking a smile. I think I'd remember that name. Oh, he's terrific. He's a world-famous wrestler, Bill replied. Turns out he was a self-described lunatic fan of Andre's. Did you ever see that episode of The $6 Million Man where he meets Bigfoot? Rob asked me. I think so, I said, as it started to dawn on me. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's him, the Bigfoot guy, exclaimed Rob.
And then this one is one of my favorite audiobooks of all time, The Magicians. It's a series of 3 books. It was made into a TV show as well. And the narrator is a little odd. And when I first started to listen to it, the voice was weird and I couldn't quite get used to it. And then I got used to it and it was so compelling. It's so rich and interesting and strange. Just this beautifully unique voice, and has turned into my favorite narrator of all time. And if you're on Audible, you can actually click on narrators and see other books that they've narrated, which is very cool. And this story about sort of modern day magicians in the ordinary world is really compelling. And the narration is excellent. It's just a wonderful book.
The letter had said to meet in a bookstore. It wasn't much of a night for it. Early March, drizzling and cold, but not quite cold enough for snow. It wasn't much of a bookstore either. Quentin spent 15 minutes watching it from a bus shelter at the edge of the empty parking lot, rain drumming on the plastic roof and making the asphalt shine in the streetlights.
And then the top audiobook I would recommend is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It's his memoir of growing up in apartheid South Africa, and he narrates it amazingly. He does all these different accents of all these different voices. It's a lot about growing up in a multicultural community and multilingual community. And he knows several languages and speaks these different languages and does these different voices. And it's so funny. He just tells these stories of his childhood that are hilarious and crazy. And all throughout, it's with this terrible backdrop of him having been born to an interracial family, which was illegal at the time, and having to live with that and grow up in the society, but telling all these funny stories around that. And it's such a meaningful and touching, but above all else, hilarious book. And it is just incredible and highly recommended for everyone to read.
Sometimes in big Hollywood movies, they'll have these crazy chase scenes where somebody jumps or gets thrown from a moving car. The person hits the ground and rolls for a bit. Then they come to a stop and pop up and dust themselves off like it was no big deal. Whenever I see that, I think, that's rubbish. Getting thrown out of a moving car hurts way worse than that. I was 9 years old when my mother threw me out of a moving car. It happened on a Sunday.
So that's it. What did you think of the list? What's your favorite audiobook? Let me know in the comments. Like the video, subscribe if you're interested in more, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks so much.